Welcome. My name is David Norheim. I'm going to run through the primers on linked open data and semantic web technologies from the SESM4 project. The first primer was on RDF and OWL with Java Veres. Then Robert Engels had a primer on Sparkle, the query language. And I'm going to talk about linked open data, which is the use of these standards in a specific context for linking data between various datasets. Linking between various datasets. So link open data is really the best practices for how to share data by linking out of your database to other data sets. And it uses the standards we talked about before, the URIs and RDF, and also you can have for all of these datasets you will often quite often have also a Sparkle endpoint. So let's just walk through a small scenario which shows you a little bit of how this is used. Let's assume that we have a database that contains authors and publications. So in this database here shown in RDF triples, you will have various types: person, a book, a chapter, and links between them, the instances. For instance, author and the title of the work. But if you're extending this data sets because you need to say more about the person, for instance, the relations between authors, you could easily just extend your database with that. That's a normal way of doing it in a normal relational database. But why would you do this when this is already done on the web by others? So instead of doing this, what we do is actually create a relation between the person that you have in your dataset to another dataset, in this case representing by a network of people. You can see this as Facebook, for instance, or as a profile, which is what we describe here, that describes relations between people and also the person and its employer. And by doing this, you maintain your own dataset while you link out to other datasets and thereby can also consume the complete set of these data. And we can continue like this. We can say, okay, this employer is described in Wikipedia or the RDF version of Wikipedia, which is DBpedia. And here you also find the location of that company. And then you can continue and continue and continue. And of course, you don't have to do all this linking yourself. As soon as you start the linking, you can enable use of the whole linked open data cloud. And by the way, this is from September last year, and it's much more extended now, but it's almost getting as big as you cannot really visualize it anymore. So to do this, you need to follow a certain set of steps, certain rules. First of all, you need to understand these rules and the principle behind these rules. Secondly, you need to understand your data, because you don't want to link your company and say it's the same as, let's say, your company Paris, in Paris, Hilton company, for instance. You don't want to link that to Paris Hilton, the person. You need to understand your data. You need to also consider that you want other people to link to your data so that you maintain what's authoritative to you. And that means that you have to create URIs to represent your own data. And then you need to set up an infrastructure so that actually others can link to them and also consume the data that they link to. And you need to link to other data sets, as I showed earlier. And then in the end, you need to actually say, people, I'm here. Here I am. You need to sort of register your data on the indexes out there. So the first step is really just following and understanding the bare principles of the web of data, which is very similar to the web of web pages. You have names that start with HTTP, but it's not anymore web pages, it's actually concepts or instances of your data, your primary keys in your database. Secondly, you need to actually be able to respond to it. You need to respond with RDF if the person says, the client says it understands RDF. Or maybe you want to say, here's an HTML page, if the client says, I just want to browse this with my web browser. Thirdly, you need to consider relationships to other data sets, as we shown earlier. Understanding your own data is also important. What are the key things in your data set? Normally this will be the tables in your database. But since other people are consuming your data, you need also to consider what are the language I'm using, what are the vocabularies. You need to try to think reuse. People are going to consume your data from not knowing the specifics of your database schema. So you need to sort of consider that you're taking your data out, a little bit out of context if people are to use them. And there are really a lot of vocabularies for reuse that people will understand. There are vocabularies for talking about relations between people, as we shown earlier. There are vocabularies for describing geographical information, and there are vocabularies for describing products and prices and so forth. And you really should consider reusing them. And then extend them when you need to, because of course your data is special as well. One of the most important things to consider is actually how to create the URIs. There are various ways of doing this. This has evolved throughout the last 10 years, but now it's a sort of a pattern that people start to use when they make URIs for the data. I won't go into that here, but there are a lot of literature on this, and you will find more information also on the semantic, the Session 4 page. Part of this is also how actually the infrastructure works. So this is more of setting up the server in the sense of a web server. So you need to consider that there will be clients understanding various formats. This can also be JSON. It doesn't have to be, the client can understand JSON well, even though your data is in RDF. And you can, oh, that was wrong. And you can, and you can test this out with simple curl or vargets to actually see if this works. You have to also consider that you're actually trying to get something that's not gettable, which basically means that the person, you cannot get the person back, you can get the description of the person. And there are techniques for doing that. So it's very important that you understand what actually people are asking for, and then you respond to what they're, you can give them with the right quotes. And then you need to, before you start to publish your data for others to actually use, you should also consider that you are just a step on the way to somewhere else. Or you may be a step towards somewhere else. So you should also link to others. Like people, travel through Frankfurt to get to somewhere else. Someone would go through your data set to get to somewhere else as well. And then there are ways of describing these links. It's not like a dumb link in HTML. This is actually a link that carries some meaning, and you should consider what that meaning is. If, for instance, my place is the same concept at the same place, Oslo, for instance, that is described in GeoNames or Wikipedia, you can use a "I'll same as" link. If it's vaguely something else, you can use a much more relaxed link like see also. Or if it's very specific that this is just some place that is based near another place, then you use things like based near. And you can use your own here as well, of course. Lastly, you need to actually tell people that you have a data set out there. So it needs to be, in a way, published in the way that you can say, like Google can find your web server. And this is, there are a few indexes out there. There are a few sort of manual catalogs that you can look up, and these are also gettable, so you can have actually a parser to run through the data sets here as well. And you have to consider things like how are you allowing people to use this freely? What are the licenses of your data sets? If your data set is large and important, it may be used, and what if it's abused, for instance? So you have to be aware of what we're actually doing here. And one of the uses that people may find is what we did with the SESAM4 project. We created an iPhone application that actually took data from that we published on the linked open data and used that to visualize information, and it also took data that came from other parts of the open data. So in the end, this is very similar to this is the whole web, but it's now data, it's not web pages. You have a web server that your actual browser connects to, but that web server may pick things from other places, like you pick an image from in your HTML page, and then people can take whatever Word documents or whatever they have and publish that on the web as well. So in the end, it's nothing more than the web on a granular level than you have today. So, just to summarize, what's important is that we start by saying we want to open up our data, and we want to maximize reuse. That's why this 5 stars. This is really what we're talking about. We want to make people use the data and not just use your data, but use the data that you link to and so forth. So we want to use open formats, RDF. We want to be linkable and link ourselves. And RDF is just the equivalent of HTML when it comes to data. And that's about it. So visit our web, sesam4.org, and look at the other primers and be in touch. Thank you.